Okay, so we are going to talk about non-Mendelian genetics. And when it starts, it gets a little complicated. So we're going to look at variations on monohybrid crosses, codominance, incomplete dominance, multiple alleles, and polygenic traits and sex linkage. So just to get started, complete dominance is where we've looked at complete dominance with only two alleles, and we've assumed that only two possible variations of the gene, whether it's blue or brown, and that one is completely dominant over the other, which means the dominant trait always shows in the heterozygous. Well, it's not exactly that simple. Incomplete dominance, it's sometimes instead of one allele being completely dominant over another, the two alleles contribute equally to the phenotype. So, like red and white become pink. And so, a red allele paired with a white allele in incomplete dominance can create a heterozygous pink flower. A little complicated. So, here's an example of incomplete dominance. So, we have a red flower that's homozygous red, and a white flower that's homozygous recessive, and when they combine together, they create a pink flower. So, according to incomplete dominance, red paired with white would make a heterozygous pink. The alleles will remain distinct, but the phenotype will appear blended. So some examples would be like a snapdragon. Snapdragons can be red or white or pink. So in this case, the red, I'm going to draw, hello. So in this case, we have a red or a white mixing with a red, and we created a bunch of pink. And here, a pink snapdragon falls in love with a white snapdragon, and they create half pink, half white. So if you look at it, red, there is a 50% of it being pink and a 50% of it being white. When two pinks get together, we'll draw the Punnett square here. We have red, we have white, and we have pink. So 1/4 of it is going to be red. Sorry, capital R is red. 1/4 of it being white because we have the little r, and then half of a chance being pink. Codominance. So let's talk about polka dots. Memory clue, co means both. So when you see co, you think both. In codominance, we see both alleles. They are both dominant. Each allele is separately expressed. Think dots, stripes, or patches of different colors. So in this case, we have a cow with a very beautiful smile there. The cow has different colors there. The flower has some white and some red and some white all mixed in. And then my favorite, the chickens have a flecks of grays and blacks and whites. So in codominance, neither black coats nor white coats have complete dominance in cows. So if a black cow and a white cow were to mate, their offspring would show both alleles, and the calf's coat would be a mixture of black and white. So an example here would be like the pure red and the pure white. When they mix together, they create a roan color. So in the notes, you're going to write here the homozygous an example. So male homozygous type A blood and a female homozygous type B blood. And what are the chances of it being a type AB blood? So you're going to write down this. Oh, it's already written down in your notes. Okay. So type A blood mixes with the type B blood. There is a 25% chance of it being AB, 25 being just B, 25 just being A, and 25 being O blood. So I need you to take a moment and compare and contrast codominance and incomplete dominance in your notes. Something you could have said is that codominance, both alleles show up, like can give spots or stripes. Incomplete dominance, they blend. So codominance, think of your spots and your stripes. Incomplete dominance, think of blending. I'm going to use the highlighter. Blend. There. Make sure you write that down. So multiple alleles, when we have more than two alleles, we call it multiple alleles. We may still have one allele that is dominant to the others, or codominant or recessive. So the dominance patterns do get a little tricky, and the possibilities are endless here. So we're going to be looking at multiple alleles. There's a little variety there. An example is blood type, so blood groupings, and there are 3 alleles for blood groups. We have O, A, and B. O is actually recessive, and AB is actually codominant because you can have AB blood. So your different combinations that you could have is A, AO, BB, BO, AB, and OO. So there's quite a few different multiple alleles that we could look at. Polygenic traits, these are going to be controlled by 2 or more genes that interact. So 2 or more genes that interact. These genes might be on the same chromosome or different chromosomes, but still work together to make proteins. So an example would be eye color and skin pigment. So you could have 2 brown-eyed parents. What they could create is 75% brown, 19% green, and 7%, about 7% blue. And then there's different options here. So if you have a blue-eyed parent and a brown-eyed parent, it'd be 50% brown, 0% green, and 50% blue. So in my case, my husband is actually a blue eye and half brown eye, so a little complicated there. I'm going to draw a little bit. So in one of his eyes, he's half brown, half blue, and the other eye is fully blue. And I have brown eyes, and my kids have brown eyes. So it makes sense that they have brown eyes and not green eyes, but they could have had blue eyes, but they didn't. They had brown eyes. I guess I had an influence there. But it usually, in his case, skips a generation because his dad didn't have the half brown, half blue eye, but his grandpa did. Here we go. Sex linkage. This is going to be from the last unit. So remember, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So the 23 pairs, if you can remember let's draw this. Do y'all remember the fancy word for the first 22 pairs of chromosomes? Should have been autosomal. And then the 23rd pair is sex. So remember, the first 22 pairs are autosomal, and the 23rd pair is sex. So let's look at this. So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and remember XX is female and XY is male. And these chromosomes also contain genes that determine some of our traits. So before we move on, can y'all tell what this is, a male or a female? Should be a male because we have an XY chromosome. If it was a female, it would be XX chromosome. So sex-linked genes, many traits are located on the X chromosome. That's why the female will pass down many traits. And you can have more than 100 disorders based off the X chromosome alone. So the females are more likely to carry the trait, but the male is more likely to get the trait. So it's kind of messed up. But because men only have one chromosome, these disorders are more common in men. So an example that we talked about last class is colorblindness and also hemophilia. So here is a sex-linked trait on Punnett squares. Remember, we use the X and then with the other letter, it's just like a normal Punnett square, so don't freak out. It's just like showing this, but we're doing it with the X's to show if it is a male or a female. So in this case, we have a female that is heterozygous, so she's a carrier, and here we have another female that is a carrier. So these two are females. And here we have a male and a male. So it would be a 50% chance of female, and of those females, 100% would be carriers. Hopefully that kind of clears it up a little bit on reading this Punnett square with sex linked. So with your on your notes, explain why males are more likely to get sex-linked disorders than females. So take a moment and do that. Something you could have said is that biologically males are XY and females are XX. So males are more likely to have sex-linked disorders because men have one X chromosome and women have the two. So recessive allele disorders, these are genetic disorders that are only expressed when the individual has both of the recessive alleles. So we talked about this last class with albinism and cystic fibrosis. Another example would be PKU. So PKU is unable to break down phenylalanine and has a lot of problems with mental retardation. So, and again, albinism, remember, lack of pigment, and cystic fibrosis, a lot of mucus in your lungs. And then Tay-Sachs disease is where you have lipids or your fats accumulating in your brain cells, and a lot of children die because of this. Dominant allele disorders, we talked about this last class, but again, these are going to be based on the dominant allele, therefore it'll only be expressed even if you only have one single one. So an example was dwarfism. We did dwarfism before. We saw it in our pedigrees, and the pedigrees, it didn't skip every other generation, it was every generation because it is a dominant allele. Another example is Huntington's. This is a mental deterioration, and it's hard to control your body movements. Codominant alleles disorder. This is going to be caused when two alleles contribute to the phenotype. So an example is sickle cell, a body disorder that affects the hemoglobin found in red blood cells. So it starts looking like a sickle instead of a normal, healthy red blood cell. So in summary, incomplete dominance, think pink. This is going to be a blended trait. Highlighter. Traits are blended and incomplete. In codominance, think co is both, so both traits are expressed. Think of your blood types. So blend and then blood type. And then multiple alleles, more than two possible alleles present. And then polygenic traits, it's a single trait controlled by more than one gene. So let's do some practice. That's going to be the next